Hello, everybody. My name's David Sargent. Delighted to be here to moderate this panel today. So in the sponsorship space, in partnership space, I've done 40-odd deals in the States, including for the likes of the Jets, the Cavaliers, the Knicks, Rangers, Diamondbacks, etc. CBS Sports, my friends are here today. Hi. And Meadowlands. You might be able to tell from my accent, I'm not from around here. So I apologize in advance for jet lag and exacerbated by being at that amazing game at the MetLife last night. But as well as being a consultant in the partnership space, I'm also an investor. So I invest in startups in the gaming space, with a few exits to my name, and I bring that up because I sold both Fresh 8 and Vikes to Sportradar, which are both kind of pretty instrumental in the Sportradar ads ecosystem. So I presume I've been invited back here today because Sportradar want to buy more things from me. Is that right? Right? Yeah. Right. Good. Excellent. Good news. But thankfully, you don't have to listen to me all afternoon. We've got a brilliant panel here. Rather than me butcher everyone's introductions, I'm going to let these beautiful people introduce themselves. So maybe tell me who you are, where you're from, and your involvement in the sponsorship space. Laura?
Lauren Becker. I'm with the NHL. I'm our Senior Director in Business Development for Media and Operations. I've been with the league almost 10 years. If you can tell from my accent, I am from here. So I grew up in New Jersey. I went to Penn State, and I've been working in sports for most of my career. I started off with NBC Olympics, then went into NBC Sports and at MLS. And again, I've landed at the NHL and been building our sports media planning, partnerships area, overseeing our ad stack, ad operations, ad tech. We support the league corporate partner media planning as well as all of our clubs. Just kind of wear a lot of hats at the league, but enjoying the time there and thankful to be on the panel today.
Hey everyone, my name is Dana Warby Robinson. I work at BetMGM as a partnership development manager. I've been with the company for a little over 3 years now. Prior to that, I was at DraftKings. So been in this post-PAPS World space kind of since the get-go and a little bit before then. So at BetMGM, I focus on team and league business development, which is sponsorships and partnerships, as well as all of the procurement for our VIP hospitality, which is a huge part of our business. At DraftKings, prior to this, I worked on the market access side. So in terms of how an operator will get into a new state market launching and who they're partnering with. Before that, worked on the activation side in terms of Bose and their sponsorship with the NFL and the league at the time. Worked in the startup space before that as well. And excited to be on the panel today. Thanks for having me.
Cool. That leaves me. Hi, I'm Hampus Lofquist. I'm the VP of Sales, Advertising, and Sponsorship for Sportradar. I have a background in sports marketing, just like the rest of our panel. I spent 9 years at UEFA in Switzerland running sponsorship. Then I went to agency side with MP and Silva for a couple of years. And then I joined Sportradar back in 2018 when we were setting up this ads division, which is, the reason we're all here today. And back then it was basically we needed a sponsorship guy to build a sponsorship vertical within a sports data and technology company. And I thought that sounded fun. And yeah, here we are almost 4.5 years, 5 years later. I've recently relocated from London to New York. I live here. Well, not in the NASDAQ building, but not too far away. And yeah, really happy to be here and get started with our panel.
Good stuff. So exactly as you said, we're 5 years into this market. I think 36 states live. Plus one or two. More than 50% of people in the States can place a legal bet, and we've seen tons and tons of deals between sports betting companies and teams and sports betting companies and leagues. But as the other panels have kind of alluded to, we're definitely seeing a shift in the whole ecosystem of sports betting. I I think some people kind of said the gold rush is over and it's time to make profits, right? At the same time, we're seeing some quite outspoken CEOs of some of your rivals criticize the sponsorship market as being too expensive and alleging kind of this doesn't work, this market. So I think on the controversial starting point, do you agree? How do you see the US sponsorship market? Is it healthy? Is it robust? Are we going in the right direction?
I think I can easily state I disagree. Especially being at a league, even though we're seeing an exponential growth in sports betting and legalization of it, it's creating such an important piece of fan engagement and an increase in viewership and a second screen experience for our fans to find new ways to engage with the game. Our fans are digitally savvy. They're very smart. They're very educated. And creating a second platform when they're going to be watching the game and on their phone and creating it in the sports betting space is key to driving that engagement. Our sports betting partners are so important to the business and to the growth of the game, no matter the sport, because sports betting is going to drive new conversation points. It's going to also increase that fan engagement. It's going to lead to more live in-game engagement, which is where we're going to be able to capture data and incorporate technology. For us, technology is key. The NHL is very proud to be a leader in the technology space. We have one of the best innovation teams in the business, in my opinion. And we've developed the NHL Edge platform, which is live advanced puck and player tracking. And we know that that type of technology point can be leveraged for fans and for our partnerships. And it's only going to enhance sponsorship as we see the market grow.
Dana, on that same point then, you're still doing deals. You maybe let's take a different angle and say, where are you seeing the value? What's of interest to BetMGM and why are you still doing deals?
Right. So I think it really depends on the market. As we know, in the U.S., everything's state by state. As we see, as states continue to legalize, and obviously, we're over half the states they all have their nuances in terms of legalization. So I think it really depends upon what the legislator states the rules are, and that includes things like the tax rate to take effect, which obviously can impact in terms of an operator's evaluation of the sponsorship dollars, how far they'll go, or just any marketing dollars. You also have markets where having a sponsorship and partnering with a team provider is necessary in terms of gaining access to that territory. So you'll see that in jurisdictions like Ohio for most, if you're not partnered with a casino, or you'll see it in Arizona as well as District of Columbia. On a state-by-state basis where it's a more mature market, something like a New Jersey, who are one of the first to go, I think you see a little bit of a shift because you will see team partners that maybe started with 3 teams for the category that they're partnered with. However, maybe they're down to now 1 or 2. That happened, in terms of some books closing, some mergers and acquisitions between the brands. So I think in terms of the space and the options out there for teams versus operators, I think it's shifted from where it was 5 years ago to now, not just the landscape, but also the amount of brands that are out there and open and willing to spend that kind of dollar. And it's only going to continue as new markets evolve. I think there's a little bit of a lull in terms of new markets, which has given operators finally the chance to take a deep breath and kind of evaluate how they're constantly, keeping pace and moving, and to see what works and what doesn't work. And overall, just be able to continue to justify the need and the ability to spend this amount of money, as part of the marketing dollars, and how it can be an overall part of the brand's marketing mix when leveraged appropriately.
And plus, I'm going to ask you the same, because Sportradar have a slightly different angle on sponsorship as well. So, that I'm not going to name that particular CEO, but accusing sponsors and data owners of adding costs. So what's your comment on kind of the state of it and where the value is?
I think it's still really early, right, when you think about it as a whole. Like you mentioned 5 years for the whole betting landscape. Some of those sponsorships have been going that long, but most of them have been going for shorter. And sponsorships, in order to sort of see the true potential, you often need to let them live longer and to actually start, tapping into all these cool assets, rights, experiences that, you can leverage when you activate your partnerships to see that true potential and to start seeing how it's moving the needle, not just top of the funnel, but sort of, if you're activating them properly, you can also use it in terms of converting customers and also rewarding them for loyalty and retention, right? And that takes time. So I think it's still early to make these kind of huge statements that, it's not paying off. I think it is when you leverage them correctly. What I will say is these 5 years have also coincided with this major life event, right, which was COVID, which was not just US, everywhere. And through that, I think the whole industry, like all industries, saw a lot of more scrutiny in terms of all marketing spend, not just sponsorship, every kind of channel that we've probably spoken about today. And sponsorship is, no exception to that. I think, we're really starting to have to, it was almost like an accelerated maturing in terms of how deals are being scrutinized domestically, looking at every right, what's working, what's not. And I think that's probably a healthy thing because it's been happening rest of the world already, but almost accelerated it here in the US. And it's probably going to leave those deals, which are, the stable deals where both sides understand this is a partnership. It's not just a one-way exchange of rights for cash. We're working together to kind of, address those different KPIs that the operator has. So it's probably flushing out some of the earlier deals that weren't perhaps as stably set up and sort of leaving the ones which are being more properly managed. That would be my 2 cents on that.
I think that's a great point. The thing that always interests me with betting and sport is that sport is the product of the betting industry. So the synergy for sponsorship is right there. And other tier one sponsorship categories, beer, automotive, they can't say the same. So I think we saw it last night at the Jets, and other people have mentioned it before.
Everyone's talking about this game, by the way. I feel like I should have been there.
Why were you not there? You missed that. So that synergy between the product is so key. So I'm keen to understand, kind of from your point and the NHL's point of view, how you're utilizing the product and how you're kind of using that to build awareness and to build, as Amber said, the partnership with your partner and how you're driving fans down that funnel.
Yeah, you live in New York now, so you probably should have been at the game. But, for us, I'm not going to say we have the biggest shareholder of, the 4 big leagues when it comes to viewership and followership, but we have such a great growth opportunity, and using our sports betting partnerships to leverage that is key to the growth. For us, finding a secondary platform to build out that engagement gives us a stronger hold of the sport and hockey, and it helps give fans another place to discuss and love the game. We know that once we have a fan in our funnel, that we show them the most exciting playoffs in all of sports. I can honestly say that. But we create a fandom and this awareness, and it layers in with engagement, and you keep somebody there. Between growing that fandom and the legalization that's kind of coming to market, those 2 pieces working together is how the sports sponsorship's developing. We talk about 5 years ago. I've been at the league from when we really rolled it out before the 5 years and how we scaled it back and then came back in. At first, it was daily fantasy, and it was a lot of brand awareness, and it was education. And with legalization, we're now shifting from daily fantasy education to sports betting education. We have fans that understand the game, and the sponsorship opportunities are now to teach them about sports betting and how sports betting layers into a new type of engagement in our game. The smarter the fan is, the more confident they are to engage in the platforms by building that content and leading them down that path of learning for both responsible gaming as well as, the benefits of extending their own experience with sports. It allows us to develop better partnerships. It creates that engagement level on our partner platforms, which creates the return on investment, and it backs up the importance of sports sponsorships when partners lean in to trusting the leagues and letting us work together with our fans.
So I think you said a couple of really interesting things there, and I'm grabbing the word discuss because in my head, sports betting is kind of monetizing opinion, right? We all have opinion, and your product is out there. Who's going to win the game? Who's going to do those things? So Dana, like from that point of view, is your main job in a sponsorship thing? Is it conversion? Is it just conversion? Is that all you're worried about, or?
No, I would say I think that's definitely a piece of it, but I think also it depends where in the life cycle the market is. So if we're approaching a sponsorship and it's to coincide with a state launch in a new market, then obviously acquisition and that piece of the puzzle and having the ability to tap into a team's email database or do paid social like whitelisting with their brand or anything like that. Obviously the acquisition angle is going to be much heavier. But when you're a few years into a market and the market's more mature, like Kempa said, though, I mean, we're really in the first, not to use a sports pun, but it really is the first inning of sports betting, only 5 years in. The mindset's going to shift. You're not going to be as acquisition focused, and I think it's going to be more about retention, and I think it's going to be more about just straight engagement. And figuring out ways to partner together to leverage both of your brands in a way that fans want to engage with, where they can get into the game or get into the product to be, whether for MLB, for example, we do a trigger promotion this past year where if a home run was hit in any of the first innings with the teams we partner with, then we would say, all right, log into the app the next day and you get a $10 free bet, So it's not something, and then we'd have the teams like push it out. So, and that can be for new customers or it can be for existing customers. It's not always straight acquisition. I think utilizing sponsorships from an acquisition point, from the retention point, and focusing more on the retention in terms of the longevity of the relationship together. Whether that's, like I said, ability to tap into events happening within the game, whether it's something where working with a team on assets that are like money can't buy things, like with a team that has a 100,000 person ticket wait list where we can do an activation or a campaign together to get you to the top of the list and win 10 years of season tickets. For people that go through generations that haven't been able to get tickets, things like that, or do things special for VIP customers. It's really important to utilize the importance of I think the loyalty in terms of their fandom, and also just helps with the loyalty of our brand. And I think someone asked in the last panel earlier, just in terms of loyalty and how you keep engaging. And I think sponsorships can really play a big part of that.
So on that point, Hampus, so Dana raises the point about you're product dependent, you're conversion dependent, and you see sponsorships in the marketplace that once they've taken the assets they want, they don't do anything and they kind of suffer because of either a poor product or a poor funnel. How are you mitigating that? How are you viewing that?
I mean, that and your original question, I think it's fascinating, product when it comes to sponsorship because of the obvious, right? The product category is the sport. We're predicting the sport, betting on the sport, which is different from any other sponsorship category. And there are some incredible kind of opportunities that come from that, which, should be leveraged when it comes to driving value. And I mean, you mentioned viewership, Lauren, all right? We know you're 75% more likely to watch a game that you've bet on. Conversely, you're more likely to bet on a game that you're watching. Like, it's fairly obvious, right? But that's an opportunity which can be leveraged in terms of experiences. In play. In Europe, like mature betting markets, like about 80% of the revenue is in play sports betting. Like, once the whistle is started, game started, people are betting live. All sportsbooks are trying to leverage that, whether you're a partner or not, right? But if you're a partner, you have access to IP, content, marks, logos, but also unique experiences that can be pushed to kind of fuel like opportunities to prompt in-play betting. That's an interesting parallel where again, if you're a sponsor, you should be leveraging that to kind of do more than what your competition is doing. So I think those sort of natural parallels between the product and the sport. Again, back to your original point, unique, and that's where if you sit down at the beginning of a partnership and look at what are we trying to get out of this? Like, why are we sponsoring this league or this team? Is it just top of the funnel? Is it the whole thing? How are we structuring kind of an activation strategy around the rights that we're going to negotiate into that deal that's going to tick those boxes and make sure that throughout this partnership we're kind of each keeping an eye on this, then you're going to have a good partnership, and then you're leveraging all these market opportunities.
I think that one of the things that really surprised me as a Brit coming to America is that you kind of have the perception that the pro leagues are the same, and within those pro leagues, all the teams are the same. And actually, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, you realize that they're all very unique and very different, and they all have a different approach to innovation and technology. And it's always interesting seeing NHL because you're kind of, that's always in your mindset. Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of how you're utilizing technology and how you're innovating and how you're using that particularly on the sponsorship categories?
Yeah, I think there's two big pillars to the innovation track. One, I think for us, and with our partners and our technology partners, it helps create a area of compliance and responsible gaming. And that's always got to be at the forefront of the conversation of the partnerships, of the technology development, because, it's important to make sure that's a pillar to the future of how we're integrating together. From the technology side, like I mentioned before, for us at the NHL Edge platform, we're one of the first leagues to roll out something of that level, which is the advanced puck and player tracking. We are tracking everything from time on ice, speed on ice, the different areas and angles that somebody's shooting from, probabilities, all those pieces of that technology that are changing the conversation around the game. And that technology is going to shape the future of sports betting as well. And I know that being able to work with a partner like Sportradar that comes to us with the ability to build this platform, it's important because, as we mentioned, Europe is a mature market, and this type of technology that we're going to layer in to our partnerships and our technology partnerships are going to change the future of sports betting from being a pre-bet scenario, hopefully in the foreseeable future, to being that live in-game betting. And then again, that's going to drive engagement for our partners on their platforms. It's going to drive viewership. It's going to ensure that the technology and advancements we're developing around the sport are not only for people on ice, but also for the fans, because any league perspective is making sure that both your players, your teams are learning and advancing and growing the game, and your fandom and your viewership is growing in parallel as well.
So Dana, on that same point then, when we look at different teams, some of them are like literally when you've done the deal, they're giving you the assets and they're saying, you run with it, it's your problem. Yep. And then others, we see them where they're, as NHL are, where they're taking it upon themselves to develop and innovate. Like where in the ecosystem do you think that fits? Is it the role of the rights holder? Is it the role of the sponsor? Is it the?
I think it's both. I think it's, in essence, it has to be a true partnership. I think there has to be pushing and innovation on both sides. And I think also because the industry is so new and everything, you're writing the script together. So it's really figuring out, where from an operator side, where we can differentiate ourselves, especially when, like a league has multiple operators and figuring out, all right, what assets and what do we want to do and how do we differentiate ourselves from other brands in the market. Same thing from the team side and figuring out, what's of importance to us with that. But I think also, just in any business in terms of relationships, you kind of get a feel through developing rapport with people in terms of, whether or not they're invested for the long term and whether they really want to push the envelope and be innovative and try new things versus whether they're a little bit more cautious and don't really want to put in the effort to kind of explore things or pivot when you get new learning. So I think it's really up to both sides to be able to innovate and continue to move forward.
100%. And I think partnership's keyword, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just sponsorship. I said it before, exchange of rights for money. Like, it has to be treated as a partnership, if this is going to last and you're going to get renewed. I think from the league side, Lauren talked about, NHL Edge, but, doing a lot of things to also create inventory through technology, right? In Europe, European football leagues have invested in virtual advertising for a decade, right? It's created additional inventory that can be sold in terms of, the brand that's shown within the broadcast on the screen, but it's tailored by TV feed. So it can be different in every country, it can be different language, different messages. NHL is now doing this both domestically and internationally for their hockey games. So that's creating additional inventory in the U.S., in market, out of market, and as well as, where people are watching hockey in Europe, for example. So we've been working with the NHL now for a couple of years, helping them commercialize the sports betting category outside of the U.S. Lots of people, I'm Swedish, lots of people watch NHL in Sweden. Like, how are we going to monetize that category in Sweden, but also in the Baltics, in France, in Germany? Find partners who want to buy these rights, but also activate them, help create experiences for fans in these countries that might only get one game in market if they're lucky a year, maybe no games, how are we going to add value to those fans? So tech is like a way to kind of create these experiences, whether it's additional inventory or, even what's going on the website. One of the things we did with NHL starting a year ago was take a look at every sponsorship deal comes with inventory for the website. They're going to give you an amount of banners that's, going to be delivered. But most rights holders, through no fault of their own, aren't necessarily set up to kind of optimize the value of that inventory. So SportRadar, we have a product for that. We're the technology partner of NHL. We work with lots of their operators. We took that as an opportunity and we created a tool that basically runs those ads through our publisher products, we call them. It basically just makes sure that the ad that's being served is contextually relevant to the game that's being played that day or whatever the article that you're reading on NHL is about. It's powered by live data, live odds. It can be even personalized to the team that you support if we know that through being logged in or first or zero-party data. All this stuff is where technology, this sounds fairly obvious, but unless you're using technology to do it, which is happening perhaps by default in the advertising section, we also need to think, how can we use ad tech to better activate sponsorships? And how can we look at all these areas of the sponsorship rights package? Where can technology play a role? Ultimately, drive value for the fan. And if you're doing that, then odds are it's going to help with the KPIs of the sportsbook.
So that word partnership keeps coming up and again and again. And I find that really interesting because when I'm working on deals, maybe that team or league is selling many rights. I think one of the Colorado teams has 6 betting partners, for example, which seems a big number to me.
It's a lot.
So Dana, when you're looking at these partnerships, how and you're going to be one of many in a relationship, but it's still forging a partnership. How are you navigating that, and then what are you asking from the team or league in return?
For sure. I mean, we personally look at it where we'll be one of a maximum of 3 partners, so us and 2 others. However, I think as the markets have matured and everything, I think, less and less are teams wanting to go up to 3 partners. I think to start, it became sometimes up to 3 partners because teams would expect such large sums for the category that one partner wasn't willing to pay exclusively. So to get that number that they were fixated on, or their leadership was telling the corporate partnerships team, go sell for this, they had to divvy it up amongst 3 partners to get even close to that number, if they did. Now I think things have settled a little bit, where you won't see as many category partners in there, or if there are, you're going to see them slowly fading away from the deals one by one, because with every partnership you lose value in terms of the amount in the category. It's a lot of times why you don't see too many category, or at least the team level, too many categories where they have multiple partnerships, because these big brands are taking all the rights. So for us, I think looking at more strategically the right partner, the one that's willing to innovate, the one that understands, what we're looking for, which is not just like logo slapping. It's being innovative. It's being creative in terms of our messaging. It's doing things that other books aren't doing, and not just owning some sort of lane of, okay, we'll slap up a logo and put, our sponsorship on the lounge or something. Just tying back to our product, tying back to engaging with fans, whether they be, BetMGM users or not. Hopefully, we can do things to make them that way, but that's not always necessarily the main goal to attach to ROI. Sometimes it can be stuff where, all right, maybe there's multiple partners, but if it's a market where we talked about iGaming before, where we have 2 products within it. So we're in 4 out of the 5 states that are legalized in the U.S. for iGaming. So you'll see we definitely have more partnerships in those states where we have multi-products, because it gives us that much more ability to utilize IP, to utilize marks, and just engage with fans.
So like when we were working at the Jets, we're creating swim lanes for you compared to your competitors. What's then interesting, Lauren, at the league level, you're kind of reselling the same thing to maybe to several partners. So how are you making sure all of those are partnerships? How are you going to service those partners fairly?
We might have more than 3 sports betting partners.
I think that, from a league level, I mean, it's
a little
completely
different
than a
versus
team.
team.
Yes, it's a little
think.
different.
It's very different.
Because we also look at everything globally. So once you add in our global landscape, I can't even add them all up. But we have a very successful sales team that's been layering in. And like Hampus alluded to, the technology stack that we're adding in, whether it's ad technology, whether it's DD technology, there's ways to carve out those swim lanes. There's ways to understand each brand is different, and what each brand wants to bring to the fans to build that relationship and to develop that brand affinity. It's different, and that's why even though they might be in the same category, it doesn't mean that they have the exact same message. And I think we have enough inventory from a league level to be able to supplement that. And for us, those deals are non-exclusive deals, which is an important part that allows us to be able to talk with multiple partners. And the more we develop that technology, the more we lean in with third-party partnerships and vendor partnerships like we have with Sportradar, it creates more opportunity to carve out individual innovation lanes to be able to service each brand and each corporate partner's needs. What BetMGM needs for us isn't going to be the same as what FanDuel needs for us. And the communication with their fans is going to be different. And being able to layer in different ad technology, different technology around the game is going to give each one within hockey a different market share and a different conversation point for our fans.
So we're almost at beer o'clock, and I want everyone to think of some good questions. But before that, so exactly on that point, how are you then measuring success? What are your KPIs in that? Like, how are you looking at the ecosystem and going, we did a good job Or is it just dollars? Is it like we're just doing this much?
I'm not going to be like money. That's obviously the wrong answer. For us, don't quote me on that. That's what's going to end up on the social channels. I'm going to get fired. And then I'm looking for a job. For us, I think for us growing that hold and that viewership growth, growing engagement. The world is changing not just in sponsorship, but the overall digital industry is also changing in a cookieless world. They keep delaying it year by year, but eventually we'll get to the cookieless world. And leaning into data and technology, leaning into that login for sports betting partners where you know who the fan is, you can engage with them, you can talk to them in an individual way is going to be really important, that first primary data point. Right. I think for us, measuring success is going to be growing that fandom. It's going to be showcasing the technology and advancing the game, and it's going to be working with both corporate partners and also technology partners to better be able to identify and target fans. And that's going to and once we're the number one sport, then we'll definitely say, it's successful.
And I think just, rate of renewals as well. Like, you talked about clubs or teams having 6 deals. Like, how many of those are actually going to be renewed because those partners are seeing the value, right? That's where, back to my probably first point about perhaps having less deals, but picking them a little more with more scrutiny. And probably one piece of advice from our side would also be consider deal term length, right? Because if you want to be able to sit down between partners and look at all these things that you can do together. You mentioned first party data, great point, right? Third party cookies going away. Brands are going to be more reliant on working with their partners, such as their league or team partners, whether it's data clean rooms or whatever system gets set up in terms of, how do we actually tailor personalized content, make sure it's compliant, gets to the right people, right age. How do we do that? That doesn't happen overnight. So if you're signing 1-2 year deals, everyone's focused on, the core basics. Often we find there isn't time to kind of get into these kind of deeper relationship bits. So that's where I think you're going to start seeing, hopefully, longer term deals that also get renewed. And I think that's also, a big success factor in terms of when, it's a real partnership where both sides are seeing the value.
That's so right. I think Josh on the earlier panel said a line that I wrote down was that the best sponsorships don't feel like a sponsorship.
Right.
So I think that ties into your point. I mean, Dana, how are you looking at those kind of when you're integrating in? How are you doing that? How are you making the?
Well, considering just how much consolidation and brands have gone out of business or pivoted away from. I would say some success is just when teams are calling and saying, hey, because we think you're one of the ones that's going to last. So that's a nice compliment, but which we hear more often than not now. But no, that was serious. But in all seriousness, I think for us, it's really important for us to be one of the best in terms of leveraging the assets that we're given and realizing the full value of them. So in terms of IP, marks, everything like that, we can talk about sports betting. We can talk about where that leaning into iGaming. So utilizing IP marks to create custom casino games with the team partners for another way to integrate within our markets. I think trigger promotions and just that level of fan engagement. I think the hospitality piece and tapping into our VIPs. I think there's just a lot of ways to properly integrate, and play into someone's fandom. And there's no, necessarily right way to do it. I think also, like I was saying before, sometimes things like the tax rates come into effect where you want to work with a team, but just because of the tax rate or where bonuses are, and how that's taxed, the economics, it's just hard to make sense. You can kind of see that in a market like New York, which is really tough. But I think at the end of the day, standing at the end and constantly innovating being able to renew with partners and continue that partnership and be in it for the long haul and kind of, take a look at the portfolio that you've done together and be proud of it and be able to show value back to the business in various capacities. And that at the end of the day.
And on that note, thank you all very much.
Thank you.